from a data standpoint, individuals, meaning me, you, whoever's listening to this, they have control over their information. They have control over their data. They need to figure out where their data is going, how it's being used, if it's being used, and to ensure that it's being used right. That's everything from a doctor's office and you're going in and getting a medical procedure done, et cetera. All the data there, is it staying within that health network? Your banking data, investment data, anything that you're doing on the web, that is controlled and really kind of goes back to us as individuals to try to ensure that it's being used in the correct way.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at Lady Lead or on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee. And I am so excited to invite our guest here today, Eric Doherty. He is he's one of the experts in healthcare and AI and based in Atlanta. So I've loved seeing the stuff you're doing in the community and all your tweets and LinkedIn's and just really creating a lot of really good content for consumption. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. Love to just maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about you and what you're excited and passionate about these days.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tracy. Yeah, my background, as mentioned, I've been in healthcare pretty much all of my working life. I actually grew up in healthcare. My dad was a pharmacist, so grew up in that environment. My mom was a microbiologist, and so definitely close to my heart as far as anything around science, chemistry, biology, and obviously generally healthcare. I worked with very, very large pharma medical device organizations, pharmacy systems, digital healthcare groups. And latest group that I exited was in that digital healthcare space, really formally into the generative AI space, not so much in the machine learning, but in the generative AI area. And just really saw a real huge need to have experts out there like myself that kind of can, I would say, undo a lot of the unnecessary fears, really kind of alleviate those fears within that technology space and make it more of an appropriate setting. The kind of the analogy that I like to bring up is Google. I mean, 20 years ago-ish, when we were just getting, I guess, acclimated to Google, what it could do and how it would work, that scared a lot of people at the beginning because you could literally just type in a word and get a plethora of information from that one word being typed into a Google search. AI and kind of the ideas of like ChatGPT and OpenAI are kind of similar to that in that it's a new technology, it's a new way of looking and using systems, and it's very appropriate, I feel, in a number of areas from finance to banking, but also in my area within the healthcare setting. And some huge benefits have already been seen, and I know in the next 5 to 10 years and 20 years down the road, we're going to look back and say, wow, that impact was immense and very, very telling for the industry.
That's really funny. I love to get that perspective, especially somebody who's coming from the healthcare and life sciences space, because I was actually just at a tech conference and there was a whole conversation around how AI is not going to be the same as how Google changed the world with search. And they said, one of the hot takes that in that conversation was that Silicon Valley is trying to find the next thing that they think is going to be life changing. And so they're dumping all this money around AI, but it's not actually going to be, they're just trying to make, again, what happened before the cachet of Silicon Valley, things coming out of Silicon Valley happen again.
Yeah.
I disagree. So I kind of agree a little bit more on your side, but I do think it's funny that some tech people think, oh, this is just going to be another fad, another thing.
Well, and I think I would say with the AI side of things, because it is so broad, because it can be used in so many different applications, I think it's spread out. I think that's the better way to put it, because it isn't going to be, one company. It's going to be multiple companies just because of the impact that different companies will have in different areas. And again, I mentioned banking. I mean, in the finance area, it's being used, for fraud identification. In manufacturing, it's used to increase efficiencies in a number of production types of facilities and genres. On the healthcare side, I mean, it's wide open. I mean, everything from electronic health record systems. Oracle just announced they're using AI in their EHR. So the system that's part of hospitals across our country and across the world are going to be using AI to basically relay better noting, better documentation, etc. And then obviously you move it into everything from aviation to heck. HR, where you can literally run data through a algorithm system for an AI system and generate, basically who is the best fit for a certain role and what type of airline engine would be the best to work with this type of jet or that type of jet. Pretty cool.
I don't recall the movie I was watching, but there's a movie I was watching a few years ago, and it's this whole idea, right, that everybody, the robots, the government is watching you. So if you're banned from something, you're banned from everything. You can't swipe anything, you can't do this, but it would be a crazy world to where, hey, you make a mistake in one company and those records kind of follow you along your entire life, and you know, you're done for. Right? Like
Yeah,
that
that's
would
kind of
be.
like health records, kind of the same thing. Yeah, with the insurance carriers, it's kind of the same thing. Got to be careful with that
Yes,
information.
yes. Yeah. I really love the idea of human and animal health breakthroughs through AI. I mean, that's a pretty fascinating thing to think about. How do you see AI being applied to things like genome mapping or drug development?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very much a fast moving environment. One of the things they kind of go together in that one of the areas that's really being focused on is when pharmaceutical companies, as an example, are running clinical trials. When they first bring a drug to fruition, a lot of the clinical drug work is actually done on animals. And so, actually, with the use of AI, what's been happening is that they're looking more and more at the aspect of removing that part of a clinical trial and moving it basically forward into human trials without having to go into the animal testing and animal clinical trial use. So that right there is huge because obviously, there's been a lot of obviously upset people around the animal world and PETA and those types of organizations where the use of animals in a clinical setting is of detriment. And so, if there's a way to get around that, that's awesome, and that's a really cool aspect. But really, on the other side of it, where you can speed drugs to market by the use of AI, really the big compliment right now is happening around digital twinning. And so, basically, having two sets of data, and within that two sets of data realm, you can actually play with different methodologies and different aspects of drug levels, et cetera. And by doing that and kind of feeding off that information back and forth, you can actually figure out faster a drug and potentially a drug to bring to market. So that's of huge value. And then I also see it as a huge win-win when it comes to the sensor side, the monitoring side, and that aspect, where you can literally trace and track data that is coming from, let's say, a wearable watch or something similar, and basically add that into a health patient biography, basically, to really see what's happening with that individual patient. And then the last thing I think that's very, very relevant is looking at it from a business model standpoint. You mentioned the patient data end of things. Having the payers really look at the data within their systems, their patients within their systems, and figuring out the best ways to make payments for certain procedures, and hopefully finding out that there's better ways of doing things for, let's say, a knee surgery, a cardiac surgery, etc., and speeding up the process for people to not only get a better sense of care and a quicker side of care, but also getting them out of a hospital space much quicker as well, and getting them home and obviously getting them well quicker. So there's a lot of really cool aspects around AI that will benefit a patient through their whole journey within the healthcare system.
Yeah, I feel like people in tech really kind of need to listen to how how different industries, I think, different sectors are envisioning how AI is helping them, because all of these things you talk about are truly life-changing opportunities that are, right in front of us. So I'm very excited about the future. But speaking of all the exciting things that could potentially happen, there's also a lot of regulation that has come about, and there's a lot of AI regulations that are kind of shaping up in both the US and the EU. So, where do you think the biggest regulatory challenges are going to lie? And do you see any risks of innovation being stifled with those regulations?
Yeah, and I really appreciate this topic. It's at the forefront of kind of how I envision AI going forward in the new world of technology. Recently I posted and wrote an article that was specific around both the EU and US designations on the rules and regs of AI, and it's a first step. The White House about a year ago put in an executive order around AI and has some pretty hefty fines if they're not followed. And it's a lot of it around the data usage and how that data is being used and making sure that it's not being used incorrectly. I think the EU version of regulations is a little tighter, which is good. And I think as time goes on, I think the regulation part of AI will be more defined. Right now, it's still kind of an open market. I think where I'm seeing kind of some benefits happening is the aspect of some of the smaller countries tagging into the information that the EU and the US has developed around the rules and regs, and just ensuring that they're starting to capture that type of sentiment around the need for a definite rule and regulation type of scenario for that environment. Where I'm fearful of is the folks that are, kind of out there that are driving towards the use of AI in bad ways. Trying to thwart systems, trying to um, basically use it for bad purposes. And so I think that's the one thing where, just like we have the police force to try to enforce, the common laws of the people, you're always going to have that bad element out there. And so really trying to ensure that, that they don't have access to a lot of the information and data that might be out there, and just to really ensure that things are held accountable when it comes to a government entity making those rules. The other aspect too is really making sure that the roadblocks are set to where there's still innovation to be had. I think a lot of kind of what's been put in place right now still allows for a lot of innovation, which is great, but you want to make sure that again it's being used in the right way.
Yes, definitely. And it's interesting to kind of reflect on the things happening in the US and EU and kind of look at those different differences. Um, how do you think that these two different nations are going to be setting a blueprint for other nations going forward? And, do you have any advice for people kind of looking at this and saying, hey, who should we be following? What should we be doing?
Yeah, again, if a country is looking at setting up their own rules and regs, I mean, obviously taking a look at both entities, both the EU and the US, would be very, very appropriate as a first step. I think again, just starting the process is probably the biggest thing. A lot of countries are still kind of waiting in the wings. They really haven't even started developing their own kind of protocols and some of the settings that are needed around AI, but it's really just getting in motion. I would say the underdeveloped countries, as usual, unfortunately, are going to be the ones that are going to be kind of at the back of the room as far as those rules and regs are concerned. But I think your more progressive countries are already starting to think through and put in place some of the needs. I think some of the larger Asia Pacific groups and some of the larger countries, let's say in South America, like Brazil, et cetera, are already starting to put those into play. But those smaller countries or those countries that are probably at the lower end of the spectrum as far as the economic growth are probably the ones that are unfortunately going to be the ones that are going to be at the back of the room and probably not be putting those in place. And it's probably going to be a detriment to that country.
Hmm. And data privacy, of course, in AI is such a complex issue that everybody has to be concerned about. How do you think some of these new regulations that you're seeing come out of the U.S. and the EU are going to be uh, protecting? Like, how effective do you think they're going to be in protecting individual data privacy? And are there any particular challenges you think they should be looking out for?
Well, I mean, the first thing, and just to make sure that everybody listening on this understands this, from a data standpoint, individuals, meaning me, you, whoever's listening to this, they have control over their information. They have control over their data. They need to figure out where their data is going, how it's being used, if it's being used, and to ensure that it's being used right. That's everything from a doctor's office and you're going in and getting a medical procedure done, et cetera. All the data there, is it staying within that health network? Your banking data. your investment data, anything that you're doing on the web. That is controlled and really kind of goes back to us as individuals to try to ensure that it's being used in the correct way. That helps. Does it always happen? No. Is that data being used even when we try to put a lockdown on having that information shared? Does it still get shared? Probably, unfortunately. So on the other side of it is just making sure that companies that you are having either work done with, or that you're working with, or that is doing work within an environment that you are in, that data is being used correctly. I think a lot of companies, I'll go on the healthcare side, are using data more that's de-identified, where they're taking the information, let's say for John Doe or Jane Doe, and then making sure that the information within a certain health spectrum is not going back to that individual directly, that person is de-identified within the system, and then they can take the data, health information from, labs, et cetera, and then run that through informational settings to get an outcome. And that's pretty cool. That's a lot of companies are doing that. But you do have those smaller companies where they may try to skirt the issue and get through and try to run data without de-identifying it, which is a cost. And that's where you run into problems. So again, we all as individuals have kind of the need to protect our own personality data wise, be it health or general information. But unfortunately, like I said, it's the company side that needs that help. And so these rules and regs that I mentioned earlier, are helpful. Are they tight as far as what they do and how they operate? I think they're pretty good. They could be better, and I think in time they will get better.
So I think people in the healthcare space kind of know about Change Healthcare's breach a little bit back. So, looking at Change Healthcare's incident, what lessons do you think leaders should take from incidents like that to strengthen their own data security strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Making sure that you've got systems in place that does, have multiple guardrails intertwined within a system, making sure that there's the fewer, the better as far as access goes. So fewer people having access to the data is better. Ensuring that you oversee that data on a regular basis to make sure that it is tightened down, that it is buttoned up from an access standpoint, and then run tests within your system. Just make sure that there's not, I would say, windows and hopefully not doors, but hopefully there's not any type of open access areas that somebody can come in from the outside and try to get in. I will say that from a country standpoint, from a bad enemy, bad person standpoint, governments around the world that are against a certain other government, are trying to thwart systems around the world all the time. There's, basically the act of trying to get into an IT system, I would say on a daily basis with most of the top 500 companies, multiple times a day. And so to ensure that you've got a system in place that protects the data, that locks it up, that doesn't have that access part of it, and doesn't have those holes in it, is a key component. And again, making sure that you've got a really, really tight IT system and IT team in place is huge. And it would be a huge benefit to the company to try to work it that way.
How do leaders try to improve cross-departmental collaboration around this, just to ensure that cybersecurity practices are consistently followed and understood by everyone, not just IT teams, right? I feel like the human is always one of the biggest issues when it comes to data security.
Yeah, very true. Um, it's multifaceted in a corporation because anybody and everybody could be a threat. When I say that, let's say you get an email and it comes in from the outside and it doesn't really have a recognizable back end email. So it comes from like a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or some other account that's not part of the company. If that individual clicks on that email, it could potentially open up a whole can of worms and run through the whole entire IT system. So it's that simple, unfortunately. So a lot of, I think the needs are training. So ensuring that the teams that are within the company are trained appropriately on what to look for, how to look for things, how to be wary of things. I think in kind of the settings I've been in, if it looks weird, it probably is. So if it is, then send that information over to IT and let them know about it. The second part is really making sure that there's a really good communication, um, teamwork setting within the organization to make sure that that communication can flow, make sure that there's information that's given both from the IT team down to the corporate level of individuals or employees within an organization, but also back where if you do see something odd or weird within the IT structure, be it emails, etc., that you inform folks, that you inform the IT team of that information, and that way they can look into it, see if it's an issue, see if it's a threat, make the appropriate adjustments, and move the company forward. Again, we are being hacked or infiltrated multiple times a day, and I think from a IT standpoint, knowing that, that's understood, and you can really be impactful to try to hopefully stop or break or block those types of threats. But they still try to make it through different ways, and even from like social media and things of that nature. There's some aspects where the employees can bring information into an organization without even knowing it, and it does and can potentially really, really hurt an IT system.
Yes, I mean, even something so as simple as an AI note taker. So I heard this story just this week about somebody added an AI note taker to a meeting, and it was an all hands meeting. And then all of a sudden, that AI note taker had everybody in that meeting's emails and then started sending advertisements across the board, right? So
Wow.
IT really decided, oh, we need to lock this down because
Yeah.
it just takes one person to add something and then everything just completely be infiltrated in a way that you didn't think would happen. But then also thinking about, hey, you're recording confidential data potentially, and you're giving it to these new AI companies, and you don't know what their security is, right? A
Right.
startup. I mean, how good are their security best practices? So it's scary. It's scary out there.
Yeah. Where the data goes, who gets it, how they get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Who's it
And
going to
how
be
many
sold to
people
in the
get it.
future? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Going back to kind of like the leadership part of things. So, change management is definitely a huge part in tech adoption. So, how do leaders encourage excitement around AI without sparking resistance? I see it everywhere, right? There's always a little bit of apprehension around adopting new things, change. How is this going to affect me? Especially since I feel like there is a lot of conversation around the possibility of job disruptions as well around AI.
Yeah. I guess from a change management standpoint, I think embracing it is key. I've been in organizations where there's been major restructuring, and you've got some folks that are very, very upset, very angry about that change, and you have others on the other side of the coin that embrace it. And what I've always found in the past, through my experiences, are the ones that embrace it are the ones that thrive. The ones that don't, unfortunately, are either in the wrong role or probably need to find something else to do in general. And so, if you do embrace change, I think it really bodes well for not only you as an individual, because I think you can move forward with a lot of things very quickly because of that, but it also obviously helps the organization. But I think the big key is that if a organization is going through change management, they really need kind of the aspect of communication and that transparency part to be at top of mind, to ensure that information is provided to the teams as to why they're doing things, what time frame they're looking at, what the overall impact will be for the organization, and then ultimately, what that means to the individual. And so I think if that's communicated properly, that's huge. Obviously, from a transparency standpoint, it can't be done fully transparent, probably in most situations, because you're obviously doing things for a certain reason, but you can up to a point. And I think just ensuring that you are transparent as an organization and as a leader as much as you can, as much as possible, I think that lends a lot of credence from the employee base to leadership, because then they have more information, they have more trust that's involved, and I think it really lends itself to a better run organization.
I love that. I love that. Wanted to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. So this episode is sponsored by This.Labs, which is the company I work for, and we are trusted experts in modern web development and consulting. So today, in today's fast-paced tech world, especially kind of the conversations that we're having today with Eric, scaling development teams to deal with all these new exciting technologies and innovations can be challenging. So we specialize in amplifying technical capabilities, whether it's expanding your dev team or streamlining projects from ideation to deployment. Specifically on the AI side, we've been doing a lot of POCs and helping leaders understand what possibilities are actually out there. So we love taking a more personalized and collaborative approach to things. And we love to empower businesses to stay ahead of the curve and maximize ROI. So you can check out this.co, thisdot.co. And big thanks to always my team for always supporting the developer community and the leadership community out there. So I have a few questions left for you, Eric. Um, how do you spark excitement instead of resistance around AI? And how do you do it in a way that doesn't take months and months and months?
uh, again, it's kind of like the phenomenon of Google. I go back to that analogy, but I think people were really kind of thrilled and kind of excited around what Google could do and how it could do it. And then obviously bringing
Hmm.
Google Maps and all of that, that was, just a huge benefit to people who didn't know how to read a map. So
Hmm.
I think AI kind of does the same thing. And I think it really starts at the top. I mean, from a leadership standpoint, it's embracing that technology just to ensure that you are, part of knowing what it can do to the organization, how it can affect the organization, how it can make the organization better. And I think from an efficiency standpoint, run better and really embracing that side of it. But also, I think understanding that some folks still have that fear component. A
Hmm.
lot of folks probably listening to this have watched Terminator 2, and there's the aspect of the group that basically can build the robots and then run AI off of it, and we're not Skynet. AI is not Skynet, and so just to ensure that it's a benefit to the industry, it's a benefit to either healthcare, finance, or manufacturing, et cetera. But it is something to be embraced and something to use that can be of great value to their working environment, to the corporation, and to the business as a whole. I think the one thing to understand as well is just to make sure that from a communication standpoint and from an information standpoint, that there are guidelines that are placed within the organization that are set up to where the employees understand how to use it, that the employees understand when to use it, but also when the employees shouldn't use it. And so things like your example about the note taking type of system, those types of applications. Again, be wary, but also go through IT before you put it onto your computer and ask them to see if it's a worthy app to use or not.
I think you see this, and it's interesting because in every single case I can think about, it really does come down to leadership and the communication that is required, right?
Yep.
So if you think about, uh, people, I think people who are kind of more in the paper space, I would say, or not digital, and then everything becoming digital, there was definitely that change, that evolution in our lives where there was a lot of concern. Oh, now things are going digital. Am I going to lose my job? I'm not going to have
Right.
to fax things anymore. I'm not going to have to print things out anymore. What's going to happen? Personally for our marketing team, I remember when AI started coming about and I said, you know what, this is a really great way to make your jobs a lot easier. And so there's that resistance part first. And I feel like there is a lot of people kind of still in that resistance phase, and then the realization that, whoa, this actually is going to make my job a lot easier, to then realizing, yeah, it's going to make your job a lot easier, but you actually still have to be the human in the loop. I didn't want AI to just do your job and for you to go to sleep. You actually need to really still utilize that creative part of your brain to make it better, right? Because AI will only go so far.
Right.
And
Well, and it goes back to the data side of it. So if you
mhm.
put in bad data into a system, you're going to get a bad outcome. You put good data into a system, you get a good outcome. So if you're asking, let's say, ChatGPT to provide a pictorial of some situation for an ad campaign, it can do it, but you got to make sure that you're putting in the information specific to obviously getting a good outcome out of that. So yeah, definitely that, even down to the wording. If you want to put in information about how you want a certain type of promotional type of program, you're going to have to put in the right information to thus then get a good output.
Yes, I love that. Well, Eric, this was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who want to follow Eric, Eric, where do we find you online?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So anybody who wants to get on LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm on both. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I got my Twitter account on there as well. You can obviously click into that pretty easily. But look forward to hopefully some other programs like this as well, Tracy, and really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you all next time.